I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, and possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam, and thank you, everyone, for tuning into this episode of the Oracles with James Tyson. Today I take you on an adventure down on the Queen Mary, docked permanently now down in Long Beach, California. I had an opportunity to stay on the Queen Mary in June of this year, just on the way home from AlienCon. Found a good deal on the boat. If you're ever down in that area, check it out. Every so often they have these $99 a night deals on the Queen Mary herself. It was an adventure. And I did the haunted tour and all the things you'd regularly do down on a ship like that. With that kind of history, anyway. In my first night, I was kind of tucking myself in and ready, and I put that little protection around myself. You know, if there are ghosts on the thing, you don't want them, kicking the foot of your bed and walking down the hallway screaming, carrying their head. Okay, maybe they don't do that, but I commonly do that little protection. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the temperature in the room dropped dramatically. And this is June. It wasn't cold out. It was quite warm, but I had the little porthole open, and I got up and shut it. And got back into bed and put the covers back up over top of me. And again, it was cold, so it was quite cold in the room. Didn't think anything of that. And I put the covers on, laid there, and then the covers actually were pulled completely off of me onto the floor, which is a little unnerving, to say the least. And when you're especially coming from an alien conference and then going to a haunted location and thinking that you're going to have a nice relaxing sleep and get the covers getting pulled off on you. So, of course, a little bit angry, to say the least, and had a few choice words for the spirit, whoever it was at the time, and said, look, you got my attention, we'll deal with this in the morning. Went back to sleep. Next day, I run a recorder, seeing if I can get some EVPs. Now, I did get a few, and a couple of them I can't reproduce effectively enough on the podcast here and let you listen to them. One of them, though, you have to take my word for it. It's just running, like the recorder, and I use a basic Zoom recorder, H4N Pro. Just turned it on, put it down, and I was just getting some stuff ready, and very, very quiet during the day. There was nobody coming and going from the ship, especially this around 10 o'clock in the morning. And when I play the tape back, I actually hear a voice, a male's voice, saying, please help me. Well, not like that, it was like, please help me. And I've been trying to clean it up because of the background fuzz, so you could hear it, and unfortunately I can't. It just comes, it would drive you crazy. It's like trying to look and find EVPs after being out with, a really noisy device in a very loud area. It drives you crazy trying to replay these things over and over again. Another one I did was I couldn't get him to, I couldn't get him. I couldn't get it clear enough, and I tried pasting it in here on the podcast a couple of times. Was I asked, are you trying to get my attention? And it was yes. But that yes was very, very gruff and low. And when I amplified it, it sounded like a flippin' alien. So this one I am going to play for you right now is I asked you. I did not ask you that. I asked a question, and you'll hear it. It's, do you want to get off the ship? Your basic question. And very surprised on the answer. And it's only amplified a little tiny bit, about 5% more than normal, just so you can kind of hear it above the hiss in the background. And listen to his answer. And I'll play it twice, and then I'll tell you what I hear as an answer, and then play it one more time.
Would you like to get off the ship?
And one more time. You can hear that the answer is very quick. It's a 2-word answer. It's very quick. Now, what I hear is, do you want to get off the ship? I hear, I can't. Very clear to me, and I hope it comes through that way to you. Do you want to get off the ship? I can't. So here it is one more time.
Would you like to get off the ship? Are you from the land around here, or are you from the ship itself?
And again, I've amplified the 2 words, 1-syllable words that I hear, that I get. So your ears might kind of perk because all of a sudden it's louder than what I was saying. And I'll give it to you here one more time. And again. I know this one's a little awkward and it's hard to hear, but here's what I hear. When I ask where you're from, land or the ship or the land, right before just as I'm finishing the question, I hear ship. Not ship, but ship. Like kind of drops off the end. Ship. And then a couple of seconds later I hear both. So it was like, okay, I'm from the ship. You know what? I think about it for a second. Both. I'm from the ship and the land. So that was a little bit of interest, and I'll let you hear it again. See if you can, if that jumps out at you.
Are you from the land around here, or are you from the ship itself?
And of course, you know, it's that power of suggestion. This is what I hear. Wondering if you hear that too. Again, the other EVPs, those were the clearest of the 5. I wish I could sit you down at my computer and let you play with them, but it is what they is. So I get this stuff the next day, and I'm thinking, okay, this has happened to me before. I get the ghost showing up wanting me to help them. I can't really, well, I guess I can. I've been told I can help them, but I've been told also that they come to me because they know what we do. When I say we, I mean Skeeter Wellhouse, or Blue Moon Weaver, who is a psychic out of Maple Valley, Washington, who, when I interview somebody, I'll find out, you know, let's say you call in, you've got a ghost in your house and you want to talk to me about it, maybe have somebody check it out. I'll talk to you and determine or not, yeah, that sounds like something we could probably poke our noses into. And then I will then call Skeeter on the phone. So the 3 of us will be on the phone. And she hasn't heard the first part. And I don't know anything about your house. I don't know what it looks like inside, whether you're in an apartment. Well, you probably know if you're in an apartment or a townhouse or a house, because we talk about how the hauntings itself. But I don't know the details of the house. Skeeter literally gets it on the phone, takes a deep breath, and shows up at your front door. Describes walking into your house, your hallway, what's hanging on the walls, where you're sitting, where the furniture is, wanders through the house, says, I had 3 ghosts come, they want to cross over. I told them to wait outside till I'm done. You've got an American, Indian, First Nations person sitting at your kitchen table. You've got a lady in a blue dress upstairs. What do you want to do? And then you and I would interview the ghost through Skeeter, determine why it's there, and come up with some arrangement, or in most cases we just ask them if they want to cross over, and we'll get them out. So in this case here, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, this ghost is getting my attention because it wants to move on. And I said, if you let me sleep, you've got my attention, let me sleep tonight. I'm out of here. If it's your room, just understand, if you don't want to cross over, it's your room, you just want me out of here, cut me some slack. I'm only going to be here overnight. I'm out of here tomorrow morning. Let's move on. So I had a really good night's sleep and carried on my trip. So last week, finally, Skeeter and I got together because she's been busy and I've been busy, and we did the deed that I had promised spirit on the Queen Mary that we would do is come back and check on him and cross him. So this is our conversation, and I don't tell Skeeter a lot about the room itself or describe it too much. She, in this case, she took a couple of deep breaths, and she said, I don't see the Queen Mary at a dock. I see it at sea. And this is where the gentleman crosses from. And of course, we end up getting his name, or at least his first name, possibly last name, and about the time he passes is right during the time it was the Queen Mary had been pulled into service for the Royal Navy as a troop carrier and was known as the Grey Ghost. And that, unfortunately, is the time that there is still the roster and the deaths and the births and whatever accidents were on that ship during the war period is restricted. Even though that it's over 75 years old now, we can't get that information, and I've confirmed that with the staff on the Queen Mary. They have a list of the deaths of people on the ship and the incidents, but they don't include the time from like 1939 to 1945-46 when it was under military service, because it's restricted information. So if anybody's got that list, great, because I'm still looking into finding out who our fella is. But we did cross him over, and I feel good about that. So he's not bugging other people by pulling the sheets off their beds. Now, people say, the other thing too is I want to point out here is there are controversies over, but you can't go into some place and cross a ghost out. We only cross them if they want to leave. Or if they're in somebody's house and they're being a real pain in the ass, we'll negotiate to the point, and then we do the shamanistic exorcism of spirits out of houses, which I shouldn't say we do, but I know people who do that, because it actually happens in my house back in July, and we did that. And I'll talk about that coming up in this episode too. The other thing too is I want to remind you, if you are a Patreon subscriber, the $3 a month one, and what seems to be trendy now, not trendy, but some people have done is they just paid me the $36 through Patreon, and that's their year's donation. Your name still goes into a monthly draw for the past life regression, the psychic reading, and the astrological chart and reading. But I've been offered a kind of a new thing. We're at 2,222 people signing up. I'm drawing a name, one or two names a month, for a trip for two, airfare accommodation, car rental to the paranormal hotspot of your dreams. And I've been offered a new perk on that. It is you will be a film crew's coming along, and we'll cover it and film a 1-hour episode of a documentary of you doing your paranormal investigation, where you're on the Queen Mary herself. What we'll do is we'll get a local paranormal team in. We will secure a full paranormal investigation of those parts of the Queen Mary that people usually don't get into, and it'll be filmed for a documentary, and we'll do that for you. If you like UFOs, on the other hand, let's see, well, I'll send you to a thing like the International UFO Congress in Phoenix, Arizona, VIP pass, accommodations, all the perks, all the lectures, and the books by the VIPs themselves, all the authors that show up. I'll take you up, probably, maybe, I'll see if we can get either maybe guys like John D'Souza, the X-Man himself, Dr. Lynn Kitai, the Phoenix Lights, will take you up to Sedona, Arizona with Melinda Leslie, and actually you will see UFOs, guaranteed, seeing objects that are unidentified and flying in groups. It's amazing. And the film crew, and we will film it as a documentary, and you will be the subject of the documentary. It will be about you and your experiences, and how you react to all the very cool things you get into. Whether if you want to sit down and talk to guys like Travis Walton, great. And if you don't know what to ask him, we'll write down some questions for you. And yeah, super nice guy. Those are the kind of things we're going to start giving away And I want to thank Jason Mills of Mills Picture Studios. Go look him up on YouTube, Mills Picture Studios, and see the projects that he has out. In fact, one of them is Bigfoot Girl. It's a Bigfoot little one-night exploration over on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, where I was lucky enough to go along with him, and we found a really nice big footprint that came into the camp. Well, not one, there were hundreds of them, because we had a visit by a few of them the night we stayed there. So again, cheers to Jason Mills. Look him up again, Mills Picture Studios. Google it. Go on YouTube, see the kind of work he does, and he's going to be coming out and filming you if you are a Team Oracle Patreon member. And if you're not, and we're thinking about, just donate a couple of bucks a month. It's go to the Oracles with James Tyson on Patreon, or to the website and click on donate. Get your name in for the monthly draws, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to get Skeeter in here. We're going to carry on and find out, and let you find out how exactly she crosses people over who have not passed. Oh, and no, I'll get back to the whole thing. I really don't care if you don't like ghosts being crossed over out of public locations, because I'm not a big fan of people making money off of dead people who are trapped. So if they want to leave, I'll help them leave. If they don't want to leave, they won't. They'll just hang out. But don't give me crap just because I get approached by a ghost in the middle of the night who wants to cross over, and I'm going to affect every wannabe paranormal team in the area that runs around with their recorders and wanting to be touched and scream and run down the hall and puddle over their own urine. Don't really care. I don't need to, and honestly, if you don't think ghosts exist and you need to prove it to yourself, that's a whole other issue. I can just tell you they do, and I'm not here to prove it to you. I can help you prove it to yourself, but yeah, I don't like people poking away at trapped people who have been found themselves not where they're supposed to be because of misadventure in afterlife. So let's help them out where we can. Skeeter, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, James?
I am fine. I am bouncing around this very chilly Pacific Northwest while you're down way in the south of the Pacific Northwest in Washington State, and I'm up here in the lower left coast of Canada on a crispy fall morning in October. We haven't been together since we were at Alien Con in Los Angeles in June, and went down there, and you did your all your magic, all that black magic. You did your magic. It's like you did past life regressions, psychic readings. One of the other things I was wondering if you were doing down there, do you get a lot of people at a alien conference who want, maybe had some, they've lost time somewhere, or they've got a...
it's a lot of memory retrieval that I do at those events.
Yeah. How did that go this year?
We had a couple of interesting ones. It was actually a little slow this year, which surprised us. Mm-hmm. But we had a couple of interesting individuals asked for some memory retrieval. We had one very interesting couple who were literally coming from very different spectrums, but had very similar trauma, and thankfully we were able to help them. Which was really good. The most fascinating thing for me, and you got to see part of it, was I do a thing called channeling, where I actually allow myself to become a vessel for another energy. And that energy gets to use my body up to a certain level. There are rules, there are boundaries, and I do have my personal guide to watch over. But they were this particular client was trying to get confirmation on downloads that they were receiving, which we were able to do, and we got a lot of information from what I understand. Thankfully, I kind of had my assistant there, and you followed up with the individual afterwards. But from the sound of it, a lot of information was given, and then the transmission, as best as I can describe it, was interfered with.
Yes.
And we had to use my emergency kit to make sure that I didn't get shut down. Like I said, I do this with rules and limits, and thankfully everything was in place.
Yes.
But that was fun.
I remember that. You called myself and your little cohort there and to come in, and she runs out and says, James, Skeeter needs you. And I'm like, what for? She doesn't need me. She's the queen of all things that are woo-woo. And I came in there, and you were almost like at a point where it was like a epileptic seizure. And yeah, it was. And then I had what did I have to squeeze? Part of your hand really tight or something? Or
no, it was the high 19th, which is the high part of the upper arm.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, I squeezed it hard enough to actually hurt my arm, and I felt it for about a week. It was that painful and how much muscle I used to actually squeeze that part of your arm.
Yeah, no, it's actually an emergency pressure point that forces the mind back into the body.
Oh, interesting.
So when I do channeling, if something decides that it wants to challenge me for my consciousness, normally it doesn't take that much pressure. Normally it's like, oh, here's Selena grab and poof, I'm back. And we've only had to use it once before this. So the fact that I've had to use it a second time, it's like, okay, we need to put in some new rules and regulations. But it's nice to know that emergency is there. And the fact that I didn't notice the bruises until the second day, and they were deep and dark and painful.
Well, good.
Thank you for doing that. But no, that was an intense experience. But he got a lot of information. They were getting dates and stuff. I don't remember everything, but I do remember it was a lot of information, and it included a lot of dates, a lot of dates. And it was information he was not supposed to get, and whoever was trying to shut me down was trying to stop me from giving him that information.
Now, he was the guy that I interviewed right after, right? Yes, and we did an hour-and-a-half interview, and I kept looking at the recorder. Everything was going perfect. Nothing appeared on the scan disc. It didn't record. Absolutely.
That doesn't surprise me.
Well, it surprised me because later on we talked about it and how he was getting information that one group of ETs really didn't want the other group of ETs passing on. If they'd only get their cosmic poop together, we could. But it was fascinating. I was just dumbfounded. And of course, he lives in one of these places. Well, I don't use Skype, and I only have my flip phone, so it only charges for 45 minutes. It's like, I'll never talk to you again. Then we'll have to meet at another UFO conference and have like 10 different ways to record this. If he wasn't struck down by lightning a day or two later.
That's the hope, is that he wasn't struck down.
Yeah, here's one, Skeeter. I was at the UFO conference, or the Soul Summit in Scottsdale, Arizona a few weeks ago. And it was all psychics and things like that. And I had just come the weekend before was the International UFO Congress in Phoenix. And I'm addicted to Uber because up until right now we don't have Uber in Vancouver, British Columbia. It's coming, but we don't have it right yet. And these drivers, I don't think I waited any longer than 3 minutes. And of course, it's 1/3 the cost of a cab, and really cool driver. And I had a lady pick me up, and her name is Princess. And I'm not going to, Princess is a cool name. I'm just going to blame her parents. But really cool lady. And I talked to her about the UFO thing, and she said, you know what? I was driving up to Sedona once, and there was a hitchhiker, a little tiny hitchhiker with a backpack. And so I'm imagining like a Wookiee or not a Wookiee, one of those little fuzzy animal things from Star Wars, the little ones. And I am thinking, okay, whatever. And so she goes, he got in, and he appeared to be a deaf mute. But when he spoke to me, it came out like music. And she said, it was almost like I wanted to put my hands over his ears, and I knew if I did that, he'd be able to hear, that I could heal him. And she had this overwhelming need to do that. Of course, she didn't do it. And she drove, and he was telling her through this music-y thing, she just knew that he was going hiking in the mountains just a little bit outside of Sedona, most likely up one of the vortexes or something. So she drove up off the main road, up the gravel road a bit. No one else around for miles, and she drops him off, and he looks at her and says, would you like to come with me? And she said, no, that's all cool, that's good. And she turned around and left, and as she's leaving, she gets about 200 or 300 yards down the road where there was nobody before, and there was a couple of black cars with men in black suits who came up to her and said, so what are you doing up here? And she said, did you see anything up here? And she said, no, I was just dropping off a hitchhiker. Did he want anything from you? She said, no. And they said, okay. And they took a step back, and she left. And as she's thinking afterwards, it's like, okay, he was an alien. Those are the men in black. I got asked. Now, what happened after this was she'd be driving down the road, and a car would be coming the opposite direction. And for some reason, the car would swerve into her lane and hit her. So she got into a number of accidents that weren't her fault. But she never died. It was like something was saying, no, yeah, nice try. She's not leaving. And
they were trying.
Yeah, they were trying to, either send her back or, or quiet her down permanently, or send her a message like, don't be picking up strange hitchhikers anymore. But she described this guy as being like 4 feet tall, and when he spoke, his mouth kind of moved weirdly, like somebody who was born deaf and mute would move, but she knew what he was saying, and it came out as a musical tone.
That's cool.
And she was very relaxed the whole time. She was just very connected, because when I got into the car and started talking to her, I said, man, you glow in the dark. You have energy, like firecracking energy coming out of you. And then we started talking about the psychic stuff and then the UFO stuff. And then she told me that story, and I think, that is cool. And I could now I want to go find her and interview her. So unless she's afraid, no, I drive Uber. I don't want to tell people trying to kill me and run me off the road. I want everybody but Princess. That should be good. But that was years ago. That was about 8 or 9 years ago. But if you're up driving around Sedona, definitely pick up a hitchhiker. If they're under 5'5", go for it. What could happen? You go onto a spaceship, you get to meet the men in black. That whole smashing into cars things.
All the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff. The smashing into cars things. I don't think that's cool, but that'd be great. So after we left Alien Con, you and your apprentice head up to drive back up to Washington, and I'm going to putter up the coast. So I look for an Airbnb on my phone, and I come up, I go, oh, look, the Queen Mary down in Long Beach has hotel rooms on for $99 a night. Well, you can't just drive past a $99 a night in the Queen Mary. So I did the That's 2 nights. First of all, I booked it for 1 night. Then I got there and I said, nah, this is going to be cool. And I go 2 nights. So for those of you who haven't been to the Queen Mary, you can just go walk around it. It's down in Long Beach, California. Wonderful ship. It's, I don't know how long, her Royal Highness or whatever, the Queen Mary, It's been there for long enough that bits and pieces of the exterior of the ship are actually starting to buckle. And you have to repair it with similar pieces of the ship because it's a historic site, which is hard to get unless you're in a 1930s shipyard in the UK somewhere. But it's been there since it was Halloween. It left Southampton in the UK on Halloween Eve, 1967, and then sailed straight to Long Beach, California, and where it's permanently moored there. Now, you'll hear all sorts of ghost stories about the Queen Mary. It is interesting. It's, of course, it's as haunted as all ships are because it's solid steel with the tidal movement of water underneath it. So it's one great big kind of electronic antenna for all the water movement that's underneath it. It's a fantastic place. It's a huge ship. Even just to be on it, the tourist attraction side of the Queen Mary and go around. Beautiful staterooms. I stayed on the A deck, which wasn't the schmanciest side. The one of the things that really bugged me was deck B, room 340. It's a former third-class cabin. It's notoriously haunted. If you Google the Queen Mary B-340, you'll find all sorts of talk. They talk about it. But absolutely terrifying stories about the stuff that has allegedly gone on there. But it was listed, I think in 2008, Time Magazine listed it as one of the top 10 haunted places in the U.S. But interesting enough, so many complaints as a hotel moored there come from people who stayed in B340. For a number of years, they actually took it off the roster. So if you stayed on the Queen Mary, you could not stay in that room. If you went onto the B deck and went to look for that room, you can't find it because the number has been taken off because everyone goes there and steals the number. So the room number is actually not there because they get tired of replacing the little brass plaque with a room number on it. But what they've done, this is where I kind of get cranky. They've now, instead of they've put it back out, you could rent the room, spend the night, but where other rooms on deck B might be $200 a night, this is closer to $5. So, it's haunted, we're gonna charge you double. And what they did, Skeeter, was they've put a Ouija board in the room, let's see, a how to play the game Red Rum, like anything that was just creepy, spooky, and stuff that shouldn't be around haunted things is in that room. And of course, you have the haunted tours every night. Somebody will take you out and tell you why or what people have seen and what is haunted, and which is kind of irritating. But if you can, unfortunately, you can't really break away from that tour. But if you could, it's a lot of fun. What were you going to say?
Well, I know they set it up, for the average Joe, the one who's looking for the jump scare or the, evidence of being, it's like going to a haunted house.
Yeah.
One of the carnival haunted houses. You want evidence of this being scary. Those kinds of things add to that atmosphere, which kind of opens them up to the experience. Does that make sense?
It would, yeah, but it also opens you up to a lot more things.
Well, Ouija boards have been around for ages 8 to 14 yes. for a very long time, and is the best way to meet new friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean...
and you can take them home with you after. It's fantastic. Hopefully fantastic. Let's talk to really old people who were haunting the boat. Oh, and the people who got murdered here. And maybe the murderer who's still killing the person. And maybe whoever else I bumped into while I was walking around Hollywood today that I've got back on the boat here. And that my intent isn't perfect. And we've had a few tequilas. Let's try the Ouija board if we want to talk to somebody. I can see it being used, and I slam Ouija boards. I also, Karen A. Dahlman is a really good friend of mine on Ouija boards. She's like the goddess of Ouija, queen of Ouija, she uses them for communicating. It's just like what some people would do with doing EVPs on a tape recorder, on a digital recorder, or turning a flashlight on where it's almost ready to turn off and putting it down and asking something to yes or no. And
she's impressive with boards.
She's amazing. So it's for communication. You can spell out a name. You can spell out a word. It's relatively quick. There are people who just walk in and say, okay, I want to speak to somebody spooky. Well, yeah, okay. I think somebody really spooky will show up. Yeah.
But you got to realize, even spirits aren't completely dumb. If they realize that there's just a goofy group of people around a board and they're like, oh, it's tequila night, they're going to be like, okay, let's just play with them and spook them and watch them be weird.
Yeah.
I mean,
let's get Larry the Axe Murderer from 11B to show up and, stand in front of them or stand behind them while they're looking in the mirror, holding a head. I don't know. But one of the things is to me, is turning something, charging people more money for a ghostly experience. It's kind of silly. When I had a ghostly experience on the next level down, and mine was probably just as good, if not better, than everybody else's, because he actually interacted with me for a reason. And then the next day, after I finally pulled myself down from the ceiling, we've talked about this before, but what had happened was I got up at 4 a.m, and the porthole was open a bit, and it was pretty drafty. So I shut it, got back in the bed, pulled the covers up on top of me, got all toasty warm, snuggled down, and then something grabbed all the covers and whipped them right off the bed. That wasn't fun. And I also did, and you know me, I go into these places, like, I meditate beforehand, I build my bubble, nothing's allowed in the bubble other than those who come for my greater good, and blah, 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 blah. Usually it's only kids that show up. This time it was a grown adult. But the next day, I set up, I did an EVP session, and listener, if you listen to the end of the tape, you'll hear them. I ask him, like, are you from the ship or from the land? And you hear clearly he says ship right after I say ship, or land. Right after I say land, he says ship. And then a few seconds later, you hear both. So, and then another one is like, do you want to leave? Yes. But immediately answering, and immediately because, there's so much energy to draw from on that, which is why so many of the dead are seen there, because they can't access all that wonderful tidal energy moving underneath that big steel antenna that they're on. But that kind of, put a bit of a damper in my first night. But the next day we kind of figured out, or I kind of figured out, okay, he's trying to get my attention for something, which is usually something to do with you, Skeeter Wellhouse.
Well, when you know a guy.
When you know a guy who knows a guy. Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, so you're here, why? Oh, because I want to cross over, and eventually it's going to get done. So I said, look, if you let me sleep in the next night, don't bother me. I'll guarantee when I get back, we'll get this done. And it's only been 5 or 6 months later, and we finally got it done. So I'm really glad he hadn't shown up at my house. So that's kind of where it's like, you promised. Yeah, I know, but if you know anything about me, you know that I'll get to it. It's on my list of to-dos. And so we'll get going on doing that. Now, if anyone wants to know a little bit more about Skeeter Wellhouse, go to our website, bluemoonweaver.com. Again, that's bluemoonweaver.com, and see all the really cool stuff she can do, from past life regressions to your basic psychic reading, to the memory retrieval, to channeling. We did some weird thing where you pointed out, or you had me realize that my higher self is actually my spirit guide. My primary spirit guide is an ET who is my higher self. It's like that never-ending circle. I just went, what? And I was telling Marianne Morgan, my other psychic friend, about this, and she said, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." And I described going down this hallway into this mall-like hall on the way to, and before I even finished it, she said, "The Great Room." I went, "What?" Sort of the Great Hall. That's what it was. She said, "You went to the Great Hall?" I said, "Yeah, it was a big open hall area with all these," and she said, "Chairs." I said, "Yeah." And so she's like, "Hey, you psychics, get out of my head." So she kind of knew where that was going, even to start with. So what we're going to do, and why my listener has showed up here, is we're going to take you through the Queen Mary. And how we do this is when Skeeter, and if you guys have a ghost, you think there's a ghost in your house, give me a shout. Go over to my website, theoracleswithjamestyson.com. Follow me on Facebook with Oracles with James Tyson. Send me an email at james@theoracleswithjamestyson.com, or even Jim's Ghost, JIMZ Ghost @gmail.com. Send me an email, and we'll bring you through, and I'll introduce you to Skeeter, and we'll both show up on the phone with you. And what we do is I'll talk to you and determine, exactly what kind of thing you may or may not have in there. Most likely you would have something. And then what we'll do is we'll phone Skeeter. So the three of us are on the same line. And it's funny because she'll take a deep breath and literally show up at your front door and walk in and start describing your house to you, where you're sitting, what's on the walls, and whatever's going on in your house, which is kind of freaky when she does it for the first time. Actually, it's freaky when you do it all the time, but anyway, getting used to that. And then we negotiate. You and I will then interview the spirit through Skeeter, and determine whether or not it's something we can talk into leaving, or negotiate a better understanding of who's in charge of the house at any given time. But that's the kind of stuff that she does. Again, her website is bluemoonweaver.com. Send her an email through there. Send me an email. Get us together if you want us to come and do a little episode about your house. Oh, episodes. Here's something, Skeeter. This is what I'm going to be doing for my Patreon account, where I have people donate $3 a month, and you get the psychic reading, the past life regression, and the astrological chart reading. That draw comes out on the 15th of each month. So I had my first one last month, second one coming out this October 15th. When we get up to that 2,222 people, I talked to a filmmaker today. And what we're going to do is, when we draw those names at that level, for a trip for two to whatever your psychic bucket list is, paranormal bucket list, supernatural bucket list. If it's UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoot, just pulling this out of the blue, if it's a UFO thing, what I'll do is I'll pay for a trip for two for you and a friend. Let's say going to the International UFO Congress again in Phoenix next year, VIP passes, accommodations, and drag you up to Sedona, Arizona, where you'll meet Melinda Leslie and go out on a UFO tour and see them. But the cool part is, it will be filmed, and it will be in a 1-hour episode, basically a paranormal episode that will be out on YouTube. So that'll be kind of cool. And if you like ghosts, what we'll do is I'll send you to, we'll actually rent the Queen Mary and do an actual paranormal investigation with a local paranormal team. And the guests whose names I draw as the gift will be the key people in the investigation. Again, and it will be filmed. So it'll be another hour episode. So it's either on the Queen Mary, or we'll go out to Gettysburg, or we'll go on to Preston Castle, or we'll go to whatever really cool public haunted location you want to go to, or even private ones, because we'll have the funds at that point to lock it down for the night and actually film it. which is kind of cool. And if we hit our 3,500 mark, we will send you off to places around the planet, over in the UK, Italy, Spain, Australia, UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts. Yeah, I put you on not a paranormal thing, I guess it would be paranormal. Send you off on a Bigfoot expedition for a weekend up in the Pacific Northwest with some of the top researchers in North America. It's fascinating, and we will film these. We'll have a film crew come with us. And you're wondering why I would do this? Well, I'm retired and I have no mortgage. But I want to travel and I want to go do all this stuff with you. So to get that, you can go over to my Patreon account, the Oracles of James Tyson on Patreon. Google Patreon and Oracles with James Tyson and sign up there. $3 a month, or to get this thing going quicker, just $36, and that's your year right out of the way. Boom, a $36 donation once a year, and get your name put on the list. And the more the merrier. The more people we get on that list, the more names I will draw every month. And it's going to be kind of cool. It's something I want to get going, and we're going to have some commercials coming out on it all through social media. We're going to be filming little 30-second commercials talking about it. So anyway, that's what's coming up. When I said episode, it just kind of clicked in my head. That was a meeting I had a couple hours ago today with the filmmakers. So yeah, that's something I can look forward to. And yes, you're going to come too. And if I end up going to the back down, and we'll drag our carcasses through the underground down in the Portland Shanghai tunnels, or go up to the East Eddy Ranch or something like that. Most likely you're coming too, Skeeter. So pack a lunch.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
I still got to we've got our first winner from your one. I've got to do a reading for.
Yes, you have a past life regression and a psychic reading to do.
Yes, I've only heard from the psychic reading one.
Yeah, Lauren said, "What do I do?" I said, "Oh, okay, I'll send you the information again." And then a girl, Apollo, who is a intuitive shamanic spear maker and a actress, guitarist and musician, songwriter, singer down in LA. She won the astrological chart, so it's kind of cool that she did it, because she is connected to the woo-woo like us. I should get t-shirts that say woo-woo. Anyway, yeah, that's going to be fun. And I want to thank you for doing the psychic reading and the past life regression for Lauren when she finally gets a hold of you someday.
That works. I'm excited.
Us too. That'll be really cool. And again, we've got another draw coming up at the middle of October. Actually, the 15th of every month. 3 names. Once we get up there a little bit higher, maybe the 500 people signed up, we'll start pulling 6 names a month, and it'll just keep increasing from then on. So as far as Patreon and somebody actually getting things back, holy cow, we're going to be giving stuff back. You're also going to be getting a film on Patreon. For those of you who aren't my patrons, it'll cost you $1 to watch it. It's called Bigfoot Girl, and those who are on Patreon get to see it for free. It's a documentary we filmed on Vancouver Island, and I guess you could probably watch it for free if you've got something like Apple TV or was it PS4 or one of those things. But Bigfoot Girl is out already, and a few of the other paranormal shows are coming out, but we will get those out to you. What was I doing? Oh yeah, we were clearing a ghost out of the Queen Mary.
Yep.
I wonder if they're going to be upset. Sometimes I feel like we should just walk into a place and go, "Oh, so you charge people money to come in here and torment the dead? You know what? That's basically slavery. So I think we're just going to clear everybody out of here so you can go pound sand." No?
You have to respect the rules.
No, I mean,
there are rules in place.
No, but the rules, I don't care. What if it's, if it's Bob who owns the farm, I don't care about his rules if he's charging people to go poke fun at all the dead Civil War soldiers that are in the back. I would rather just say, hey, have you asked anybody if they want to leave?
Well, remember when we were in the Shanghai tunnels and we had all those spirits, but a lot of them, they didn't want to go.
Yeah. Well,
because there were a bunch of them down there taking care of the others.
That's right, but they had already crossed over too.
Yes.
So which is a whole new thing to me about, like, this is something I've realized that, and I was impressed with myself. I was fascinated that I actually got a photograph of one of these spirits and an elemental being, and that spirit had already crossed over and came back to look after the ones who hadn't, and had an elemental being of protection. So that was kind of cool. So I have a picture of that. Yeah, if anybody wants to see that picture, you might be able to find it on my, eventually scrolling through all the photos on my Facebook page, The Oracles of James Tyson, or just the James Tyson ones. But yeah, it was a fascinating First Nations American Indian lady who had been murdered there, who had crossed over and come back. And she's sitting down almost like on a bench. She's about waist height, a little higher than waist height, to what looks like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's a big demon thing. And what is it? Oh no, hold on. That's a protecting being. And she's very quietly just sitting there. But she showed up extremely clear. And again, if you want to take pictures of something you think or you're in a haunted area, take 3 or 4 at a time. She shows up very clear in the first picture, fades away in the picture 2, and is gone in picture 3. So I can tell you that there's not a shadow that's constantly there. It's not, well, are you just seeing something the way the light is? Because it disappears. It's in one photo, and it's not in. You see it fading away. So yeah, she was there when I first zipped out the. Actually, I did it with my iPhone. Then it was like, oh, we got to leave. He's taking pictures. Damn it. So yeah, it was kind of cool. Okay, Skeeter, let's head to the Queen Mary. Again, for those who are playing along at home, just go to Queen Mary. Just Google it. Go to Wikipedia and see where it is. It's parked down at Long Beach Pier in Southern California. And read about a lot of the ghosts that are on that. And we're going to see who we bump into and why this gentleman, I say he's a gentleman because it was a male voice that I actually heard in he's an electronic voice phenomena that I got the next day when asking him about pulling the sheets off. Got a lot of dead air. I did it for maybe half an hour, 40 minutes, and got like 3 words. So they're edited down. But stick on to the end of the show. I put the EVPs up, and I've put them on a number of times, so if you miss it when you first listen to it, at least it'll be there. So, Skeeter, take yourself a nice deep breath and move on.
Okay. Let me see if I can focus.
And the room number was A, like Alpha, 032.
It's weird. It's like I'm actually seeing the Queen Mary itself on water. But not like tethered, but like moving. So that means we're going back in time with her. Can you give me a description of what she looked like? He's big. He says we're supposed to be clean cut when on the ship, but he had a beard. When he was off the boat, he'd grow a beard. But when they were on the ship.
Does he remember the name of the company that owned the ship?
He's saying it, but I can't hear it.
Okay. It's Canard.
That would explain the shape of his mouth.
Canard. Okay.
There was someone else, too.
Oh, there was somebody else? When you say there was someone else, too, what does that mean?
He says there's another company that he worked for. There was another group as well. So it was more than Canard.
Oh, okay. There was the white... Well, we were all Canards. But it was Canard Line, and then there was the White Star part of Canard.
The White Star.
That was 1936 to 1949, Canard White Star Line. So was he on the ship during the Second World War?
Yes. It had been converted.
It had been converted for a troop carrier, correct?
But he preferred the land.
Yes. Yeah. Let's see, I'm just kind of going over some of the history of it right now. Built at the John Brown Shipyard, 1936.
It says that's before him.
Yeah. He was there, Second World War. Both the Queen Mary and the Normandy were joined in New York by the Queen Mary's new sister ship, Queen Elizabeth. It was out of Clydebank. That was in 1940. Does he remember the name of the Queen Mary back in the Second World War? What it was called? They used to call it?
Yes.
Yeah, fine. What was it?
That's what I'm trying to hear.
2 words. First one is gray.
He's trying to tell me to go to Grey Ghost.
Yeah, it's Grey Ghost. It was the Grey Ghost. Why is he still with the ship right now?
It's where he died.
Oh, he passed on the ship itself.
Yes.
Okay. What's his first name?
William. Wow. I normally don't get names.
Yeah, that's very cool. Do you get a last name from William?
No.
Okay. And how did
Billy is how they called him.
They called him Billy. How did he pass?
He was crushed.
Oh, it was an accident.
Crushed. Yes, accident.
And
it shifted. Something shifted.
Okay, he didn't get pinched between a door, or in a door, did he?
Yeah, I hear a yes. It slammed something. Slammed.
Okay. Was he trying to run between 2 doors, or run through a doorway when the door?
He was thrown.
Oh, they were thrown. Okay. And was he the one that visited me in my room?
No, he did. He did visit you, but he's not the only one, he says. Not the only one.
Was he the one who pulled the sheets off my bed?
Yes.
Okay.
That was a solid yes.
Yeah, that was the one I'm concerned with, because I kind of made a promise the next day with that gentleman that I would help him cross over if he wished to do so.
And then you sent the girl.
Well, yeah, because I can't do that. Well, I guess I can, but she knows how to do it better than me.
It is okay if you say so.
If you say so. Does he know? Is there a spirit of a Russian around where my mom was?
Yes.
And is he wanting? Does he know this Russian? Is the Russian a good guy or a bad guy?
So he's okay. He's okay. He's not a bad guy. Passenger.
Yeah, he didn't die on the ship, did he?
No.
And why is that?
But he is tied to the ship.
And did you know why?
Owner, money.
Okay, that's a different Russian guy that I'm thinking of.
It's a money thing.
Okay. Yeah, the one I'm looking for is a Russian spy that was arrested, and his daughter was on the ship the last time.
His daughter's still on the ship, but the man you're asking about is not on the ship regularly. He comes to check on his daughter.
Okay. Is that Russian fellow who comes?
The daughter is down in the lower levels.
Okay.
What would have been the upper class nursery area, I guess, whatever that is.
Is her father already crossed over?
Yes, he comes and checks on her.
Do you think the daughter would like to go with her dad?
No, she likes the ship. She likes all the attention.
Yes, I bet she would, because she's mentioned on all of the ghost tours. Have you ever been on there?
No, I've never been.
It was very interesting. I went online, and actually there's a book and it's got the ghosts of the Queen Mary. This a fellow named John Henry one they called Grumpy, and Captain Treasure Jones, John Petter, Dana. Those are three of the ones that people see a lot. Dana, I think, was murdered, or her sister was murdered, but this is after Billy passed. It's very interesting. There's a lot of deaths. Well, it's been around for a long time, and like any other place where people congregate, there's going to be deaths, whether it's a accident or a medical condition, and that included all the crew members too. So interesting ship. I've got a photo here that I'm looking at of crew members who died on board. And going back to the 30s, here was great, right in 1949. Was he there in 1949? No? Okay. Because I just kind of...
Died before then.
44... Would his rank be like an able seaman?
Yes.
I'll have to just kind of save some of these images and bring them up, because people definitely had posted photos online of the various artifacts and things that are on the walls on the Queen Mary, and one of them is just photographs of the plaque that have the list of the names.
He would have been on the list of enlisted men.
He was enlisted?
Yes.
He was an enlisted man. Okay, so he was actually in the Navy?
Yes, naval.
He was naval. He was not working for the actual shipyard. He was working for the British government.
Yes.
Last name's not Golding.
Sounds familiar.
A.J.G. Golding died June 8th, 1936. Able seaman Golding.
It's not him, but it's a name he knows.
Okay. And
a name he knows, yes.
And I'm not finding anybody else. There's a W.E. Stark who died in 1949, but that was second officer, and he drank tetrachloride by mistake, which would be awkward.
Well.
But the other thing, too, is during the war, the list of people who passed away on the ship, it's restricted to a point.
Yes.
Because, according to the people who do the tours and things, not to be released because it was restricted during the Second World War on who was on the ship, and it's still under military lockdown, let's call it. So,
but that's where you'll find his name is.
It'll be on that document. Of course, we'll find it on documents we have no access to, because that's just the way things go. Every time we keep trying to find somebody, they're always on some other document. So yeah, basically the only one that I can see that was listed on the document was a steward, like a major steward.
No, stewards wouldn't have been down where he was.
The night steward died in 1944, October 8th. Able seaman died in 36, and then after that, it's all 1949 and onward. But, it's interesting. But his was a naval rank as opposed to a working on the ship rank.
That he got in that way.
That's how he got on the ship, was joining the Royal Navy. That's correct.
He was on the ship and stayed on the ship via the Navy.
Okay. So when the Navy took it over, off it went. Does he recall when his birthday was?
18 something.
Month and day?
February something.
And February in the 1880s. Is that what it was?
1800s. All I saw was the 18. I couldn't catch the rest.
Okay.
And February
1800s. Does he know how old he was when he passed?
30s. He says something 30s.
Okay.
So I don't know if the math adds up, but yeah.
If he was, it doesn't really. If he was
but February came out the hardest, so I'm going to stick with February.
Yeah, if he was
the 18 could be February 18th, because back then they did 18 February and then the year, right?
That's British. That's the way we did it. We still do in Canada.
Okay, so then it's probably the 18th of February and then whatever the year.
So his year is Might have been like
unknown.
Yeah, 1899 to 1920.
Because it was 18 Feb, and then I couldn't see what came after that. But he said 30, which was pretty cool for the age 30s.
30s.
I didn't catch if it was 30, if he was actually 30 or 30s.
Okay. I am scooting around here looking for a pen or pencil. We've got writing my notes into a large document on the computer here, so it's just bear with me. What else can we ask him? Does he have any questions for us?
When are you going to cross him?
Well, as soon as you tell me your date of birth with the year, month, and day. No, I'm kidding. We'll cross him. And is there anybody else who's standing around him that needs to leave? I shouldn't say needs to leave.
No, just he's the only one that wants to leave right now.
Okay. Well, because I did promise him.
He's sweet on someone, so he wants to go visit him.
Oh, him or them?
He wants to go visit the person he's sweet on.
Oh, okay. But, and then you said he's sweet on somebody, so he wants to go visit him.
Oh, them.
Them, okay. Or her. Okay. Tell me what the process is, and we'll let him go.
I just have to ask if Osriel is available, and ask my guides to open up the door for him. And any good vibes and energy that you can send his way to help push him along is all we need. Because if he's ready, I don't see why he can't go.
Yeah, he's got his luggage packed, and
yeah, he looks pretty dapper right now.
Okay.
He's got a hat on, and it's not quite like a U.S. Navy uniform. It's like jeans or denim on his legs.
Okay.
And leather, but it's like from the bottom down, or like mid-chest down. He's just as he would for work, but like from the shoulders up, it's almost like the uniform. It's really weird. But you can see the flickering between what he looks like with the beard and what he looks like clean shaven. So he's already shifting. Osriel, are you available? Is he eligible to go? And both of them went, yeah, he is. And he's like, yeah, I am. Osriel, just allow me to be the bridge between the two worlds, as you've always done. Osriel says for you to ask him, see if he's still there.
Billy, are you still there?
Says, what do you think? Osriel says, what do you think?
I'm now focusing, not looking at photos of the Queen Mary online. Hold on a second. I see him standing, but I don't see him on a boat.
So ask him where he's at.
I just got going home, gone home, at home, something like that.
Wish him well.
Well, I wish you well. Okay, we've crossed over people before. I've never had to get involved. What the heck's going on?
Osriel wants you to learn how to do it.
Oh, that's
and also he wants you to see that what it actually does do, what they look like after they cross.
What I saw was a person standing completely straight, like at attention, but his left hand was up, like whereas his arm was bent, his hand was in the middle of his chest, like it was holding something, and his right hand would be straight down. He was looking completely straight ahead, translucent, or
yep.
But I could see behind him like a town or a village or a city or something. Home, and that's where I just got. I'm going home. I'm at home. So
yeah.
Well, that was really cool. We haven't done a crossing over for a bit.
Yep.
Yep. You're still doing them though, aren't you? When people call
I
you
am.
Up, yeah. Then they say, "Hey, I got this thing in my house. I really think you should talk to it," and then you cross them over.
When I get the call, yeah. I've been kind of laying low for a while.
laying low and hiding on the calls?
Yep.
If someone wanted help them remove something or see if there's something in your house, they can still get a hold of you on your website, right?
Yep.
Which is?
bluemoonweaver.com.
Alrighty, for those who are familiar with the paranormal, you know that it takes some energy for them to communicate when you're doing an EVP. And I had an EVP session on the Queen Mary back in June when I was there. And at the end of the podcast, I've added a couple of the EVPs. You know how you usually ask a question, wait 30 seconds or so they get enough energy to answer. Well, this is pretty darn immediate, primarily because the ship itself is a big chunk of metal with water moving underneath it. So it's literally conducting electricity. And that's why ships are professed to be so haunted. They're probably not more haunted than anything else. It's just that we can see them easier and they can contact us easier because they can draw that energy from the ship and use it. And in this case, when I was staying there and Billy grabbed the sheets off my bed in the middle of the night and pulled them off, he was getting my attention because he knows, and we're going to talk to Skeeter a little bit more about this, on how they know that they bumped into somebody that can help them in their journey, or leave this part of their journey and cross over. Because it has happened a couple of times where in one case, Skeeter and I crossed over a young lady who died accidentally of an overdose years ago. And we were doing a paranormal investigation of a place called the Rio Theater on Broadway in Vancouver, Columbia. We were all in the ladies' room, and Derek White Skycloud, a shaman, was talking to a lady who had passed in the 1930s, and she was telling him why she didn't want to cross over. And he turned around and said, "Oh my goodness, you just had a woman walk out of the stall." And he's looking at me and he says, "She's standing right in front of you, looking up at you." And I said, "What does she want?" Because I couldn't see her, of course. And he said, "She knows what you can do." So she already knew from the other side that I had a connection with Skeeter and that Skeeter could cross her over. So later on, I got a hold of Skeeter and we crossed her over, just like we did with Billy today, which was very fascinating for me. So they do kind of pop up. Skeeter, what do you think about stuff like that? Does that happen often? Do they seem to show up knocking on your door?
Yeah, they do.
Isn't that that's awkward, isn't it?
No, it is a little awkward. I live next door to a nursing home, and I've one of my favorite stories is that I normally tell spirits that I'm off between the hours of 10 p.m. and 9 a.m. About 2-3 o'clock in the morning, something kicked my bed. And I'm like, "Go away," I'm off, and the bed shook again. And I opened my eyes, and there was an elderly woman standing there. And she looked at me, and she goes, "Are you the one that passes spirits over?" And she was too damn cute, so I said, yes, I'm the one. And she went, "Can you please send me home?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'll get up and I'll cross you. You're just too freaking cute." And yeah, they if they know you can do it, they will find you. They will go out of their way to find you and have you help them.
Okay, so we get a guy like Billy who just crosses over. Where is he now? Like, what is he? What's his process?
No.
What is he up to?
He's probably gone home to wherever home is. Probably checked in with the family graves, family energy, and is on his way to what I call the blue room.
Okay.
I affectionately call it this because I don't have any better word to describe it. I don't think it actually has a name. Mm-hmm. But if you've ever seen the movie Men in Black, where they're processing all these things coming and going, that's kind of how it is. But except for just coming and going, they stop in and they get to do something that is really what I consider fabulously amazing. They get to relive their lives through the perspectives of the people they affected in their life. And this is how they glean the wisdom of that life so that they can actually absorb and take in those lessons so that when they plan to move forward or whatever it is they plan to do in the afterlife, they can do. A lot of people are like, well, what about heaven and hell? Well, if you think about it, if you lived your life thinking you were a good person, and it turns out you actually hurt a lot of people, and you have to live your life through the perspective of the people that you hurt, thinking that you were a good person, that is kind of hell. If you are expecting to go through hell because you don't think you were a good person, and then you get to go through this process and see all the people that you actually helped or touched or positively affected, then that is kind of heaven. It's really kind of a mixed bag because it removes our human perception of what good and bad is, and we actually live the experience. And for some spirits it can be really hard, and for spirits it can be really rewarding. But once you go through it and you're like, oh, that's what this was all about, then you get to go on to whatever it is you're supposed to do.
Okay. I just was talking to a friend of ours, Marianne Morgan, who is a psychic and works a lot with locating bodies for the government and police, families, things like that. She didn't call it the blue room, but when she sees it, it's actually blue. It's almost like a translucent blue kind of area where all the different family groups and everybody, or your angels and your family and your guide kind of get together, and it's your life review.
Yes.
Which is what you're saying. She was also saying that, you can go straight to this one and it's all good, or if she calls them the darker, the twinkly angels, the ones that come and get you and say, come on, come to the light, we're going to go have. There's also a darker one that'll take you to basically a dark void where you have to make a decision, okay, and you can get yourself out of that. So I'm wondering, if the negative part of the dark or the blue room where you get all the negative side of things you've affected, would that possibly be the dark one, or is it dark one separate?
I think it's all together. I mean, think about it. If you've done a lot of harm to people in your life, you've eventually got to face that.
Yeah.
So that doesn't surprise me that there would be that. For me, I've come to the point where I just see it as a collective. I don't see the good or bad. I see it as a collective experience of you have to experience the bad that you did to people. You have to see how your negative actions have impacted people.
Yeah.
But I also know that sometimes we have to do bad things to good people because that's how the spirit redirects people sometimes. So that's why I have a hard time being, well, it's not good or bad, it just is. So no, I completely agree that what she sees is absolutely there because they have to go through those lessons.
Yeah.
I just don't see it that way anymore. As a kid, I did see it that way. There was definitely a darker angel who showed up and was like, no, we got to go do this. Now I don't see them that way anymore.
Yeah, it's all just part of the learning curve.
Yeah.
And some perceive it as being negative, but it's only negative if the individual was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're having to live the lives or feel the feelings of all those that they hurt.
Yep.
And we all have to do it, or else we get stuck.
Exactly, which is why it's really important you do your shadow work here on this plane so that you can move through that plane even faster.
Oh, I see. Now, you've got a guy, it was interesting you asked, or you have, who's the angel that came down and helped, the archangel who was helping cross Billy?
Archangel Azrael.
Azrael. Now, you asked Azrael if Billy was ready.
Yeah.
Like, if Billy says I'm ready, it doesn't really count. He's got it, or does that mean, are they ready? Is the universe ready to receive him?
Remember when we went to Preston Castle?
Oh, Lord, yes.
And that is in its own way a blue room here on this plane. Mm-hmm. The Queen Mary is a blue room on this plane. The spirits there are going through their own process. So just like when we were at Preston Castle, I couldn't cross anyone because it was against house rules. I had to make sure that I was following the rules of the Queen Mary.
I see. So you just double check that with the Archangel.
Yep. And if he says, nope, I have to go, sorry, this episode is over now. But luckily he said yes, and even Billy was like, yeah, I'm ready. I did the thing. Can I go home? So now he can advance.
I know we ran into that a few years back, and you didn't know what this site was. I sent you an aerial photograph of basically just a field, and it was a site of a very prolific serial killer in Western Canada. And you went there and you described what you saw, and you were challenged spiritually, in spirit, as you remote viewed this. You were challenged by beings, very strong and very tall beings, on what your purpose was there. And we had discussed that at the time, where the Blue Room itself had been placed on Earth, where the souls of all the women that were murdered on that property were still going through their own education and transition and preparing to leave. And we did cross, I think, one or two that were there because they just happened to be ready when we showed up. Yeah. But the others weren't. Yeah. And it was kind of interesting because they're like, who the hell are you and what are you doing here? These, like, you show up in your little astral form, bopping along like Skeeter does, and all of a sudden you run into like elemental beings that are protecting. And if for the listener who doesn't know this, we had a serial killer named Robert Picton. His victims were sex trade workers. A lot of the sex trade workers, if not all of them, were either drug addicted with mental health issues or drug addicted. More than half of them were First Nations or North American Indian. When he was arrested and that property was shut down, and there literally was an archaeological dig that went on for evidence that went on by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for quite a while. But we had First Nations bands, or what you would call American Indian tribes, showing up at the borders of the property with healing circles and drum circles and blessing. So they're also responsible for putting up or calling in these beings for protection of the souls until they're crossing. Am I right by saying that?
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of people need to understand this isn't a punishment to the souls. Normally, these blue rooms on this plane are normally associated with locations that have an intense amount of trauma. Preston Castle has its secrets, the Queen Mary has its secrets, that site has its secrets. And what it is that it's kind of like calling in an emergency group to help the individuals on site and to walk them through the trauma of what technically interrupted their lifeline. It's basically somebody else's free will interceded upon theirs. And so it just requires a little bit of extra care and love and attention. And the spirit world knows how to do this for us. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, it does. It's kind of one of those things, like if you think of these asylums and psych wards and things where people want to go and, oh, they're full of ghosts and we can come in there and have a few beer and run around and tease them. It's they're there because they're not ready, but they are relatively protected when they're there.
Yep.
I found that when I was on the battlefield of the Little Bighorn, there's a couple of bushes there that are beside a cairn with the soldiers' names on it. But the bushes, almost every branch has a ribbon or a medicine bag hanging on it. It's one of the most blessed locations in the United States. because from the day of the battle until probably yesterday, people have come there and silently either prayed out loud, blessed the battlefield, blessed all the souls, and constantly put a blessing out to those who passed on both sides. And the American First Nations, they started that day. They were blessing, and they blessed both sides. They blessed them for fighting well and dying well, and they blessed all their soldiers for fighting and dying well. But that's been going on for over 100 years. So those grounds are what you would call hallowed grounds. Taking a stone from those grounds, handing it to a psychic, and saying, "Where does that feel like?" It's all positive. It's all 100% positive energy. But when you say, it's from a horrific battlefield, well, all battlefields are horrific, but this one has been blessed. It's
been tended to. The wound has been tended to.
Yes. For my new listener, what do you mean by that?
When a place of tragedy, when an event of extreme tragedy happens, that location almost becomes a gaping wound, not just for those who were present at the time of the event, but historically, and it's almost like a tear in time. That place becomes almost frozen in time. Just like on your own skin, if you get a bad enough injury, it leaves a scar that no matter how old you get, you see it, no matter how long it's been there. I mean, it could have been something you got when you were 1, and it's with you until the day you die late in your 90s. It's a gaping wound, and every time people go to these locations, whether it's the port where the Titanic left or the port that the Titanic never made it to, whether it's ground zero for 9/11, whether it's the site of the massacres, whatever it is. Again, these are usually tied to blue room sites. When you pray, when you give blessings to all involved, not allow your hate or your prejudice or your fears or that need of that just basic human emotion to get in the way, to just be like, okay, something really bad happened here. I don't understand it, but I wish everyone well. I wish everyone love. I wish everyone quick learning, quick speed to get to the other side where they can actually do the healing they need to move on. You're actually treating the wound. You're treating a pain that has affected more than just those who were there. I mean, that site, that battle happened over 100 years ago. But even when I drove through there recently, you feel it. I mean, I knew where I was the minute my head spun.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, where am I? Oh, yeah, here I am. It wasn't negative. It was just a lot. The fact that people are still going there, they're still blessing it, they're still praying for it, has turned something that could be very ugly into something that is now neutral. Mm-hmm. It still deserves a lot of respect. It still deserves more love, but it's not bleeding out. It's not ugly. Does that make sense?
It does. What about places that still exist today as monuments, or I shouldn't say monuments per se, because that sounds like a positive, but are a reminder, like the facilities at Auschwitz?
See, those haven't been prayed over the way they should. And if you talk to anyone who's been to them, it's weird. One of the things, they recently let some drones fly over Auschwitz recently. It just feels heavy. Even the images feel heavy.
Yeah.
I know a lot of communities have tried to pray over it. I know a lot of communities have tried to step forward and be like, we need to make this place a place of healing. But it marks such a horrific point, and so many people want to turn a blind eye to it. all you feel is this heaviness. It's like a wound that just won't heal right. It's like that break in your wrist or ankle that never healed right, so you're always going to have that limp or that twist. Like my daughter broke her pinky and it didn't get set right, so now it looks like she has this weird crooked weird finger. It's kind of creepy, but it's that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's different. It's almost like a taboo place to even think about Auschwitz.
Yeah, which is sad because it needs that love. Yes.
Yeah, it needs to. When people think about it, it's the first thing they think about is it's an anger. Which makes, with only 70 years ago, it's still relatively fresh on our social conscious. What occurred there? If you were to think something positive and think flowers and light, in your gut, it's almost like a blasphemy. It's like, what are you doing? You can't make light of that location. Why are you thinking flowers and light when it's a horrible, horrible place? And all of a sudden, when you start saying, well, it's like when you call anything horrible long enough, it's a self-fulfilling. Well, it's not in this case, it's a horrible place, but it's not out of our conscious yet to where we can say a blessing for it. You see what I'm saying? It is a kind of we're in a quandary when it comes down to describing a place like that is still in the forefront of our history and our minds. I did a reading for a psychic in Arizona, and I told her she had to clean out some things. Like she says, oh yeah, I've got a lot of things to clean out. And I said, no, you really have to clean out some stuff. There is some stuff that you need to get rid of. I'm getting that you have to get rid of stuff. And she says, well, my father was he was a Marine during the Second World War. And as a result of him coming back, her daughter became a war historian. And professor, and some of the things she had at home, she had a sword, a Japanese officer's sword, still had blood on it. And as soon as she said that, I could see the sword in my head, and it still had the arm of the Japanese soldier, that energy holding the sword. And I said, you have to get that thing out of there. You've got to basically get it blessed, have that energy return to the deceased Japanese guy, and whatever else that thing's done. But you have to get rid of that. And she said, yeah, I bought some shoes that were very interesting because my daughter being a war historian, I thought it's a conversation piece. Well, they were shoes that a prisoner wore in Birkenau, a concentration camp, and there were still particles of human teeth on the bottom of the shoes. And I said, not only do you have to get rid of those you need a rabbi in there to bless those things. That has to be out. And those have to they have to be given away to somebody who that can go into a museum somewhere, or they can deal with that in how they see fit. But you cannot have those in your house. And there was another thing she had. She goes, well, I also have a flag that I used to hang up on the wall when I was a kid. Not that I'm a neo-Nazi or anything. I kind of wonder, where the hell is this going? Well, her father hung around after the Second World War. What he would do was, when the U-boats were turning themselves in, he went onto a U-boat and seized the flag off the U-boat, which wasn't the big Nazi traditional flag, the swastika and the white circle on the red flag. This was the Kriegsmarine German naval flag, which is just kind of like a big cross on it and a bunch of coats of arms and things. And she said, what do I do with that? And I said, well, the sailors on that U-boat hadn't killed anybody. They're all a bunch of 15 and 16-year-olds who got forced into the war. They were fanatics. Probably a couple of them were fanatic Nazis. But that flag was neutral. Like, it didn't have any energy in it, like those shoes, my gosh, and that Japanese officer's sword, which still had blood, most likely of Americans on it. Like she said, had blood on it, and most likely, well, that's an American's blood. yeah, you definitely have to get those to go on. So I said, get a hold of your daughter. She's the war historian. She's got the contacts that can get these things out of your house, and you will find other things in his belongings. So when I got the information coming to me that she has to clean things out of her home, that was definitely something that needed to leave. How did we get off on that? Oh yeah, we got into the concentration camps and the disgust and the pain. Those things still bring people.
But that stuff is a good example. I mean, it still holds that energy.
Yeah.
And you have to go through a process to release it and heal it and send it on.
Yes. And, for somebody she is a very intuitive and psychically intuitive, it's amazing. She, doesn't like sit around the house and see Japanese soldiers running through the front room and poor young, people who were subject to the prisoner of war camp filing through the kitchen. It's like, oh my God, your house is like, you're crazy. It's like, what are you doing? You should know better.
But you got to realize everybody's gifts are a little different, and she may actually see those things as an item that she loves and values. So for them, they're pulling, they're drawing that love off of her. So they're not going to do anything to upset her or alarm her, because if she's giving them love, if she's giving them attention, which is what they need, or it's like a human. If I'm loving you, if I'm giving you the care and attention that you need, are you going to freak me out and chase me off?
Yeah, that could be it too, because the shoes may have been drawn to her because of who she was and how she thought about them, and that she was thinking positive thoughts when she looked at them. And it's just time for them to go. The sword. It is. The sword, seeing the person's arm just from mid-bicep down, holding onto the sword, it was like the energy from that Japanese officer in that sword, his energy was still there. He may have, well, I doubt it, but he may have been captured and lived out his life in the war and gone home after, or he was killed that day, but that energy was still there. And it was stuck. No. If it actually had a piece of the body, then it was stuck. It wasn't a piece per se. It was what I saw was no, she doesn't have the sword with a piece of body hanging on it. What I saw was the sword with the piece of the body with it. Yeah. Because we did cross. There was a girl in the bedroom. Oh, this is a Skeeter. You should have been there. We crossed. Well, you were there. Remember, you went down to the basement remotely and tried to get into the room that had all the spirits in it and the elementals, and you couldn't get in because of the smoke, and you were coughing. That was interesting because a psychic showed up here in person along with a shaman, and they said, "Yeah, there's a guy on fire in that room." Why you couldn't get in there, because it was just bellowing out of the room. And she crossed him over. His wife and child, who also died in the house fire, came and got him. But in that room on the bed was the energy of a woman with something dark in her abdomen, and they actually removed it from the abdomen, and the energy, the imprint of the lady left and went back to the living body. Which, holy cow, Skeeter, what are you doing? Yep, sorry. What is that? You broke into the ice machine or something at the 7-Eleven? What's going on? I just wanted something to drink. No, okay. I'm sorry. Well, you should get it from the tap instead of the waterfall out behind the house. That was amazing. Next time I'm going to get your Skype working. I'm going to anchor you to the computer so you're not wandering around like that, which is kind of cool. We are talking to Skeeter Wellhouse. She is a psychic and does everything from crossing over the deceased to doing past life regressions, does some channeling. Heck, Skeeter, if you go to bluemoonweaver.com and check out everything that Skeeter does, bluemoonweaver.com, and if you want a reading, or if you're having a challenge with a a noisy spirit around the house, give her a shout, and she'll have a chat with it and find out what it's up to, and either ask it to cross over or maybe make a deal and say, if you're okay with it living there as long as it doesn't slam cupboards in the middle of the night, which is a bit of a pain in the butt. BlueMoonWeaver.com.
Thank you, everybody, and I want to thank you too, Skeeter, and I want to make sure I get these EVPs back on at the end here. So remember, I've got the two that were the clearest. Unfortunately, they're not super clear, but here they are, my EVPs from the day after my sheet pulling off on the Queen Mary.
Would you like to get off the ship?
And that's the one I hear as, would you like to get off the ship? I can't.
Are you from the land around here, or are you from the ship itself? Are you from the land around here, or are you from the ship itself?
And that's the one I hear as, well, from the land around here or the ship itself. I hear ship, and then after pause, he says both.
Are you from the land around here, or are you from the ship itself?
Thanks everybody for dropping by. Thanks for listening. Thanks for putting up with both Skeeter and I and our ghostly adventure. Remember to drop in. Come visit on Facebook, theoraclesofjamestyson.com, on Instagram, on Twitter, on iHeartRadio, on Spotify, everywhere a podcast can be found, Spreaker, all these other little locations, YouTube. And if you really like what we're doing and you want to get your names into those draws for monthly readings and coming up hopefully by early next year, get ourselves out to some of these events and travel around, get your name in. It's $3 a month or $36 for that 1 year at the Oracles of James Tyson Patreon account, or go to the website, theoraclesofjamestyson.com.
To the long, endless night, and I live in the absence of light, and my shadow has life of its own, watching you while you sleep all alone.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing as they go. What are those voices? Look up for the mountain. Wake up. Somebody better hide on through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. We are after you, dead or alive. We are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget yourself. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done. Throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after now. Through the hail, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done, throw your gun away. Here comes the Mounties to get the man they're after. No!